唱。南無阿弥陀仏。
南無阿弥陀仏。
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 南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南 Hi! Thank you for joining us for this year's 2020 Tri-State Denver Buddhist Temple Bodhi Day service. Bodhi Day is the day that we remember Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment. Today for service, we're going to have a chanting of the Sanbujo, or the 3 respectful callings. And then immediately after that, we'll be chanting Juseige. We'll be having a reading of the meditation, and then a Dharma talk in English by Reverend Diana Thompson, and a Dharma talk in Japanese by Reverend Noritaka Amada. Thank you very much for joining us.
が言調整がひしむ浄土志願不満足政府上昇がお無量公不意大聖衆不採小民具政府上昇が市場分の妙正長寺法空教味所の政府上昇利欲人少年上映主凡行しぐむ浄土一生天人知人力縁大公不生無才道少女三苦名交際集約難回避支援滅死根門は閉塞小悪道通達全宗門高僧上満足異様老寺法日月修十期天候不言一種解放像公正苦毒法上大修十説法ししく供養一切部具足習得法元年心上満得意三害用女仏無下知通達未不詳願学縁に投資最小尊志願や国家大戦の感動国書店に法珍妙形ナマンナブナマンナブ Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 namanda. Please join me in Gasho for a reading of The Meditation on page 103 in Denver's Blue Service Book. The Buddha surrounds all persons in all forms of life with infinite love and compassion. Particularly, the Buddha sends forth his loving thoughts to those who are in suffering and sorrow, to all those in doubt and ignorance, to all those who are striving to attain truth, and to all those whose feet are standing close to the great change we call death. The Buddha sends forth oceans of wisdom, mercy, and love. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we are observing the Bodhi Day service. This service commemorates when, on December 8th, Shakyamuni Buddha, or Prince Siddhartha, became Shakyamuni Buddha. The story goes that for many years, of course, he lived in a palace. He lived amidst much opulence. Everything in his life was very, very beautiful. But one day he decided to find out what was outside of this beautiful, opulent place that he had grown up in. And so he went on a trip into the town outside of the palace walls, and it is said that there were 4 sights that he saw upon leaving the palace. He saw an old person, a sick person, a dead person, and a monk. Now, the first 3 sights, all 4 of them he had never seen before, but the first 3 he found very, very troubling. So he asked the chariot driver, what is this sickness, what is this old age, and what is this death? And the chariot driver told him that these are inevitabilities. All people will go through this. We will all experience sickness, old age, and death, and there is nothing we can do. Well, this, of course, didn't ease his mind at all, so Siddhartha asked about the 4th sight, the monk, and the chariot driver told him that this was a person who was working to try to transcend the dis-ease caused by the first 3 sights. So it was at this point that Siddhartha decided that he was deeply troubled by the idea of sickness, of old age and death. And so he set out to take up the path of a monk, to find out if he himself would be able to somehow transcend the suffering that the first three sites were causing him. So he went off into the woods, and there are many, many stories of his travels around and the various practices he did and the people he did them with. But the last group he was with was a group of ascetics, and these were people who were the opposite of the opulence that Siddhartha had grown up with. They ate very little, they exposed themselves to the elements, they slept very little, and basically were trying to transcend the body, which experiences sickness, old age, and death. And in this way, this was their attempt to get away from the suffering caused by those three things. Siddhartha practiced with them for many, many years and was incredibly good at this particular practice. So good, in fact, that he almost died on the road. Well, as he was laying there, a woman by the name of Sujata came by and offered him a little milk and a little rice and revived him and brought him back to health, enough so that he decided that the life of opulence on the one hand and the life of complete denial on the other were not the way that he could find transcendence from suffering. So he sat down underneath what we now call a Bodhi tree and decided that he was not going to move from that spot until he had found sort of a middle way between that opulence and that denial. There are stories of, as he is sitting there are devils and demons that are trying to distract him from his purpose as he goes deeper and deeper into his meditative practice. The demons come in armies to shoot arrows at him, and the main demon, Mara, tries to send his beautiful daughters to dance for him so that he will be distracted from his meditation. But Siddhartha could not be swayed. And so, on the morning of December 8th, just as the morning star was in the sky, he became awakened. And Buddha means awakened one. So we now know Siddhartha Gautama as Shakyamuni Buddha, or the sage of the Shakya clan. Now, at this point, he rose from his seat and he was feeling the wonderful feeling that comes with having awakened or attained enlightenment. And it was this point that he decided that this was not something he wanted to keep to himself, that what he had awakened to was so marvelous that he had to tell everyone. So he immediately set out to share what he had learned. And the first group that he met was the group of ascetics that he had practiced with previously. Now, they made fun of him a little bit. They called him a quitter because instead of dying on the road, he decided to get up and do something else. But eventually, as the Buddha started talking to them, he gave the first sermon that many of us know as the Four Noble Truths. And as they listened, they began to understand, and as they saw his gentle countenance, they began to understand. And they too wanted to follow this path that he had awakened to. Now, this time of year, December, the month of December, we find that in many, many, many different cultures, we observe and celebrate festivals of light. So these can be seen in traditions like Hanukkah, Diwali, even Christmas, where the light of the world is said to have been born. And of course, these are all sort of stemming from, or certain traditions stemming from, old pagan Yule traditions. Now, all of these traditions, of course, come because, especially in the northern hemisphere here, we are in the dead of winter in December. And even though we know we have a couple of months, it starts getting darker and darker, and it gets colder and colder. And so many of these traditions and rituals and celebrations came from wanting to dispel this darkness, wanting to do something to not only dispel the physical darkness, but the fear that was caused because of that, because many people, especially hundreds of thousands of years ago, were concerned that if they did not do these rituals to call back that light, to call back that warmth, maybe they wouldn't eat the next spring. And what if it never stopped being cold and frozen? And what if it continued to be dark? So the days would get shorter, the nights would get longer, it gets cold and dark. And as we come together with these rituals and these celebrations, we are doing so contemplating this cold, dark, sleeping world around us. And so again, we do these rituals, we have these celebrations in order to chase the darkness and the cold away. Now, in amidst these two, we also have the stories that we tell at this time that go with these rituals and celebrations. And all of these stories are sort of meant to be stories of hope, stories that will bolster us through the tough time and remind us that right now we are experiencing this darkness, we are experiencing this cold, and we are suffering in fear, but something better is coming. Now, the story of Buddha's enlightenment is a story of hope and kind of has the word light within it, with enlightenment itself. When we talk about enlightenment, we do say that it is the light of great wisdom, that having awakened to what Siddhartha awakened to become the Buddha is something that brings light to our lives. So it enlightens everything we do. This story is a story of hope because it's one that reminds us that we have all got that same potential. We won't become perfectly enlightened in this lifetime, but there is hope. And it reminds us not only of this potential, but also reminds us of our own struggles to stay awake, our own struggles to dispel the darkness, our own struggles against the cold. And when looking at the story of Prince Siddhartha, we see that it was a long time. He left the palace when he was 29 years old, and it was years and years and years before he was able to find this enlightenment. He struggled a long time. He tried to learn as much as he could from teachers, and he worked with these ascetics and did many, many difficult practice until finally he decided that all he needed to do was just sit. And in doing that, he was able to dispel his own darkness and at that point too, help to enlighten the world, because once he had found his own comfort and joy, he wanted to spread it to everyone else. And so in this way, again, it's our own tradition and our own story of how we dispel the darkness in the dead of winter. So at this time, as we consider the story of Siddhartha's great awakening, we need to remember to keep this light alive, that because Shakyamuni did not shy away from sharing the teachings with everyone, we, even at this time, are able to hear and share them with others. We can realize and reflect on the great teachings of the Buddha, the ideas of impermanence and interconnectedness. We can reflect on the idea that even though it's very dark and very cold, time has not stopped. The earth will continue on its rotation and spring will eventually come again. And within that too, let us remember that we are always enfolded in the Buddha's light of wisdom and compassion. And when we say Namo Amida Butsu, we are acknowledging that light of wisdom and compassion. And we're expressing gratitude for that wisdom and compassion that is dispelling the darkness and will eventually lead us out of winter. So thank you all for joining us today. Please join me in Gassho. The radiance of enlightenment in its brilliance transcends all limits. Thus, Amida is called Buddha of the light of purity. Once illuminated by this light, we are freed of karmic defilements and attain emancipation. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha.
ミダ釈迦の慈悲よりぞ、元祖仏心はえしめたる。信心の知恵に入りてこそ、仏頓報ずる身とあなれ。ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏。皆様、本日もようこそのお参りでございます。本日は浄土へということで、お釈迦様の話をさせていただきたいと思います。浄土へというのは、英語ではボディデイと言いますが、これはつまりお釈迦様が悟りを開かれた日です。お釈迦様といえば、釈迦族の王子として生まれ、その後出家をして悟りを開き、ブッダと呼ばれたお方です。では、そんなお釈迦様の姿は一体どこで見ることができるでしょうか。この部屋やご自宅のご仏壇、そしてお寺の本堂を見渡しても、お釈迦様の絵や像が見当たらないことがあります。浄土真宗の行事としてお釈迦様の像を目にする機会といえば、花祭りの日が浮かびます。これはお釈迦様のご誕生を祝う行事で、その日には甘茶、甘いお茶ですね、甘茶と呼ばれるお茶をみんなですくって、色鮮やかな花に囲まれたお釈迦様の像にかけていきます。これはお釈迦様がお生まれになった時に空から甘い雨が降ってきたことに由来しています。では、なぜここにお釈迦様の像が安置されていないのかを考えてみますと、まずここには真ん中に阿弥陀如来様が安置されております。そして親鸞上人と蓮如上人、お釈迦様の像がありません。これはなぜかと考えてみますと、まずお釈迦様の教えの説き方の特徴として待機説法というものがあります。これは聞く人に応じて仏法を説くというものですので、一つの教えではなく多くの教えをお釈迦様は残されました。それらがインド、中国、日本へと伝わる中で、どの教えを中心にするのかということで宗派が分かれていきました。そのためお寺ではその宗派がよりどころとする仏様をそれぞれ安置するようになりました。浄土真宗はこの阿弥陀仏の救いをよりどころとするので、本尊に阿弥陀如来をこのように安置しています。また先ほどお務めをした重生下やまた三仏下などのお経はお釈迦様によって説かれたもので、そこにお釈迦様の存在を感じることもできます。宗祖である親鸞上人も正真下の中に釈迦如来両が線と釈迦という文字を入れていたり、今回挙げさせていただいた御三代の釈迦弥陀の慈悲よりぞという部分にもお釈迦様の名前が出てきます。ここに安置されている阿弥陀如来像を見ると、どことなくお釈迦様の像に似ているような気もします。阿弥陀仏の像のモデルがお釈迦様であるという話も聞いたことがありますが、親鸞上人のお言葉に、発心は色もなし、形も増しまさず、しかれば心も及ばれず、言葉も絶えたり、とあるように、仏には色も形もないと言われます。三心という言葉があり、発心仏、法人仏、応人仏の3つに仏の体を分けて、3種類に分けて見ていくという考え方があります。最初に挙げた発心仏というのは、 真理そのものとされて、親鸞上人がおっしゃるように、色も形もない、目に見えるような形で存在しているわけではないという考え方です。そして2つ目の法人物。これは阿弥陀如来など。そして応人物は目に見えない真理そのものである発心物を説くためにこの世に現れた仏、つまりお釈迦様であるという話も聞いたことがあります。私たちはその仏というそもそも色も形もないものに対して手を合わせて南無阿弥陀仏と言っていることになります。釈尊をはじめとする多くのおかげさまによって今私が仏法に出会っていることに気づいたとき、感謝のお念仏があふれてきます。合唱お願いいたします。南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏。